source for everything paranormal. Para-X. Throughout the ages, history has been altered by word of mouth and the misrepresentation of those who might not have been present when some of the world's most significant events took place. Channelers Barry and Connie STrohm bring through the spirits of those who actually witnessed or took part in these historical events and lets them tell their stories in their own words. Welcome to Channeling History. And now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie STrohm.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Channeling History. We are the only show where we speak to the souls that made things happen, and we are brought to you on the Para-X radio network. We always try to start off with a little disclaimer because we never have any idea what is going to be talked about on our show. The opinions or statements voiced on our show or the channeled words of the spirits do not necessarily reflect our opinion or those of the Para-X radio network. I'm Barry STrohm, your host, and I will be doing the channeling tonight.
And I am Connie STrohm, your co-host, and I would like to thank you for tuning in to our show this evening. I will be asking the questions, as usual, of our spirit guest. Tonight, we'll be talking to one of the most famous individuals from the Old West. He was born in New York City in 1859, and his name was Henry McCarty. He assumed the name William Bonney and became famous by being known as Billie the Kid. All of the history books tell us that he was killed at the age of 21 by U.S. Marshal Pat Garrett. We have channeled him before for a chapter in Barry's book, Spirits Speak of Conspiracies and Mysteries, and we can assure you that there is a lot more to his story than what you find in the history books. Our show, Channeling History, is a little different in that all of our guests are on the other side of the life veil. We can assure you that you will not be hearing our guests on any other shows. When we channel one of our spirit guests, we never have any idea of how the questions will be answered. We welcome any questions, by the way, be submitted through the chat room. In fact, we welcome that very much. We do have a list of prepared questions, but we prefer to use those of our listeners from the chat room. When Barry channels, he's speaking the words of the spirits and has no idea what the next words will be. He also remembers very little of what he channels. Occasionally he will get an answer incorrect, especially when it comes to dates. In ancient times, there were no calendars available to most individuals, or they used a different type of calendar than what we use today.
In the future, we're going to be doing some very special shows. At Christmas time, Mother Mary is going to join us and tell us the truth about the birth of Jesus. I've written about that in my previous book, Spirits Speak, Channeling the Life of Jesus, and she will reiterate much of what's in the book on that show. We plan to do a show about John Wilkes Booth and the Lincoln assassination. His story is not what it appears in the history books either. We welcome your suggestions for future shows or questions for our spirit guests. To submit them, please email channelinghistory on parax@gmail.com. That email is channelinghistory on parax@gmail.com. Tonight, we'd appreciate it if you would submit your questions through the chat room. We are watching for them, and when they come through, we will attempt to use them. While we do have questions prepared for our guests, we welcome your participation. Last week, we had a wonderful interview with Princess Diana, Princess of Wales. She told us of her, shall we say, tumultuous marriage with Prince Charles that resulted in a divorce and what really happened with her death. That show is available either on my YouTube channel or on Podomatic.com. Now, when we begin channeling tonight, you will hear Connie ask the questions, and I will answer the questions in the words of the spirits. So we have another great show tonight. We've already been talking with Billie. He's ready to go. So let's begin speaking to the spirit guest that is known as Billie the Kid. Now, if you've been listening to us, you know that we always say a prayer of protection before we start. We all know that there is evil out there, and we open a channel. We don't want any coming through. So right now, Connie will say the prayer, and then we'll begin to channel with the individual known as Billie the Kid.
God, please grant us your wisdom and protection. Grant us the knowledge that we can handle and keep us safe from things that will harm us. Keep the messages positive and pure love. Keep us safe from our egos. We ask these things in the light of the seen, the unseen, and the honesty of God. Amen. Okay, Billie, would you like to begin with a message for our listeners?
Yes, I would love to, actually. I am astonished that people are still interested in my story after all these years. I lived in a time where you really had to protect yourself. We all carried guns, and we all knew how to use them. It was a very, very difficult time. There was very little law and order out in the West, and if you wanted to stay alive, you had to be very fast to react. Those fast reactions could get you in big trouble. I had what was thought to be a very short life, and actually I was almost killed at the age of 21. All I can tell you is that when you live in a time like that, you react to what is going on around you. We lived in a time where it was either often kill or be killed. For that reason, I was forced to kill quite a few men. You now live in a time where there is still evil and killing, but at least your police force is far better organized and coordinated than it was in my day. So, I'm happy to be here. I hope you enjoy what I have to say, and I am ready to answer your questions.
Okay, let's start out with, what was your birth name before you were Billie the Kid?
Well, I was actually born Irish. My name was McCarty. I found that there was a lot of people that resented the Irish. So I figured that I did not want to use my name, McCarty, around such violent people that probably hated the Irish. So I went by several other names, but mostly the one I chose to like the most was William Bonney.
Okay, where were you born?
Well, I was born in New York City. I know that seems a little bit strange, but my mother couldn't make ends meet there, so we headed west. We were in Indiana for a while, and then things did not go well, and we were forced to move further away.
Could you tell us a little more about your trip west?
Well, my mother remarried because when I was born, my dad skipped out of town, and I never really did know who my true father was. And let's just say that the guy that she married wasn't like the best that you would ever know. So it was a fairly tumultuous trip out west.
Okay. How old were you when your mother died?
When I was 14, my mother died of what you would now refer to as tuberculosis, but in our day we just called it consumption.
Okay. And how did your stepfather react to her death?
He skipped out on us when we were living in a boarding house, and all of a sudden he was just gone. And it was up to my brother and I to either exist, to find food, or starve to death. So he was a real, I was going to say something bad, but I know you're on the radio, so I won't say it.
Okay, Billie, we have a question from our chat room here. It says, was the movie Young Guns somewhat accurate about your life?
I laughed a lot when I watched the movie. A lot of it was made up. And when I was actually living as Billie, it was a hard life. There was nothing very romantic about it. I mean, we were forced to do things we didn't want to do. I stole horses, I'll admit that. I got into fights. I had to kill people. But there was actually nothing romantic about it. So I kind of thought the movie was a bit of a joke.
I'd have to agree with you on that one, Billie. Okay, what was the reason for your first arrest?
Well, we needed clothes, my brother and I. And there was a Chinese laundry. So I snuck over one night, and I stole some clothes, and then I saw a gun laying there, so I also took the gun. And sadly, the woman the woman that owned the boarding house where we were living, saw what I did and reported me to the sheriff.
Okay, I have another question from the cat chat room. It says, did you at least like the soundtrack to Young Guns?
Well, I guess I should say I liked something, but can't really say I enjoyed it. They tried to, I almost said something bad again. They tried to make something good out of something bad.
Okay, looks like our listeners are very interested this evening. I have another question from there. It says, did you ever marry and have a family?
Well, I must admit I was a woman's man when I was young. But I was kind of in those days you kind of loved them and left them. Because being a wanted person, I couldn't stay in one place for very long. When we get into some of my life that took place after I was supposedly killed, I did marry then, yes.
Okay. How old were you when you killed your first man?
Oh, well, I was around 15. In those days, if you could walk, you could go into a bar. And when you went into a bar, you better have been ready to fight. So a guy picked on me, we got in a fight, and I was the first one to shoot.
Okay. How old were you when you killed your first guy?
I was 15.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Okay. How did you earn a living at that time?
Well, I practiced quite a bit with my gun. So I was a pretty good shot. I met some friends that were making a living on the wrong side of the law, and they taught me how to rustle cattle. So I started doing what I had to do. We would steal cattle. In those days, the cattle were owned by some very, very rich people. So it wasn't like I was stealing from the poor. We were taking cattle from some of the richest men in the country at that time.
Who was John Tunstall?
John owned a large ranch in Lincoln County. He kind of took me under his wing, and taught me a bunch about ranching, about herding cattle, and he was really a good man. There was another group of people in Lincoln County that basically controlled it. They owned the dry goods store where people had to go shop, and also had a huge ranch with cattle. They resented the fact that John was in competition with them. But he was a very, very, very good person.
Who murdered him?
Sheriff Brady got a fake warrant for his arrest, and he and a posse murdered him. Now, I can't tell you for sure whether it was Sheriff Brady or other members of the posse that pulled the trigger, but I will tell you for sure that it was under Sheriff Brady's orders.
Why did you get involved in the Lincoln County War?
I figured it was the right thing to do. Sheriff Brady came out to try to arrest us, and he caught what we referred to in those days as lead poison. Once that started, then all hell broke loose in the county. The people on the Tunstall side were fighting with the other people, and things turned into a bloody mess pretty rapidly.
Yeah. So then you did not kill Sheriff Brady?
I didn't say that.
Oh.
There was a lot of lead flying, and I will guarantee you that a couple of those bullets in that lead storm came from my gun.
Okay. Could you tell us about your deal for a pardon?
Well, when things quieted down, most of the guys were given pardons, but I wasn't given one. I was given a chance to testify against the other side, and I was supposed to be given a pardon for the conviction of my killing of Sheriff Brady. And once I gave them the information, they reneged on the pardon. I mean, what was I supposed to do? I was set up and I was trapped, and I certainly wasn't going to go down without a fight.
Okay, we have another question from our chat room for you. It says, how did you feel when you first killed somebody? Actually,
I didn't. I fully realized that he was trying to kill me. So I didn't really have a bad feeling about it. I knew that if I didn't pull the trigger first, he'd pulled the trigger, and then he'd been standing there looking at me instead of me looking at him. So I didn't really feel bad. In those days, people were getting shot everywhere. It was, if you went into a bar, you knew you had a damn good chance that you were going to be using your gun before you left. So, no, I killed him with a clean conscience. It really didn't bother me that much.
Okay, we have another question from the chat room. Have you met anyone that you killed now that you're in heaven? And what was that meeting like? That's a really interesting question.
Actually, I did. I've met some. It really wasn't too bad because they knew that it was kill or be killed. So we found out that many of the people that I killed, it was actually in their life plan that it was their time to go. So everybody pretty much gets along over here. Even though, we may have done some things to each other, everybody realizes that they can't do it anymore when they're on this side. So, yeah, we did pretty good.
Okay. How about if you tell us about your escape from the Lincoln County Courthouse?
Well, Garrett and his posse captured me. And I was sentenced to be hung, which it was something that didn't really appeal to me too much. So I was transported to the courthouse in Lincoln County, and I was trying to figure out how to get away. So there was a deputy, his name was Bob Ollinger, and he was such a, almost said it again. He was nasty, and he picked on me, and I waited. There were other prisoners in the courthouse, and in those days they didn't feed them in the courthouse. They took them across the street to the bar and gave them some food. So I waited until they were over there eating their dinner, and I told the one sheriff that was watching me that I had to go to the toilet. So I had handcuffs on, so he led me outside to the outside toilet. When we were coming back, he was walking in front of me. Now, he didn't know it, but I had a double-jointed thumb on one hand. So I slipped out of the handcuffs and grabbed his gun out of his holster. And I told him to shut up and keep quiet. Well, sadly, he didn't. And he took off running. And I had to shoot him. And I regretted that. Because James was a good guy, but he had to try to run, and I really didn't have much of a choice. So I went up into the room where I was being kept, and I saw Ollinger's shotgun sitting there. So I went to the window because I knew that gunshot was going to draw some attention. So here comes Ollinger running across the street, and I yelled to him and I said, "Hey, Bob, look what's coming your way." And I put both barrels right into his chest. Now, I got to admit, I probably shouldn't have done it, but as I told you before, he was one nasty individual. Now, after the shooting stopped, nobody really tried to stop me. So, got on a horse, and I rode out of town. But sadly, but I left 2 bodies behind.
How many men did you really kill in all?
Well, it's hard to tell. There were some that several of us were shooting at him, such as the sheriff. But to the best of my recollection, I would say that I probably killed about 9 people.
Okay, could you tell us what happened at the Maxwell farm, where Pat Garrett said he shot you?
Well, we were on the run, and I was I had a good friend with me, and I was actually seeing Maxwell's sister. Now, apparently Maxwell didn't think too much of a gunslinger seeing his sister. Now, we understood that Garrett was in the area with his posse. So I was trying to be careful. Maxwell had slaughtered a cow, and my friend decided that he wanted some meat that night. And I told him, I said, don't go over there. It's dangerous, because we really don't know where Garrett is. So anyway, he goes on over. Apparently, Garrett and his flunkies were hid in the bedroom in the dark. Well, when my buddy goes in, Garrett shoots him in the back. When I heard the gunfire, I ran over to see what was happening, and all of a sudden they're shooting at me. So I turned. I had a bullet graze my forehead, got hit in the shoulder, but I managed to run to my horse and to escape out of town.
So Garrett said he killed you there, and obviously he didn't. Who did he kill?
He killed my best friend, shot him in the back.
Okay. How was it possible for Garrett to lie about who he killed?
Well, not even a U.S. Marshal can shoot an innocent person in the back. So he was afraid he was going to get into the frying pan for what he did. So he acts real quick and threatens. There weren't a lot of people there. So he threatens the people that are there that if they don't say that he kills me or Billie, that he's gonna have it out for him. So anyway, the people lie. He buries the body as quick as he can to get it underground. And with everybody lying for him, he tells the world that he's killed Billie the Kid. Now, what he was trying to do was to collect the $500 reward that was on my head. Since it was a little bit awkward that he didn't really have confirmation of my body, they never really did pay him that reward. Okay, let's take a little break here. It's time for a little bit of commercial time, and then we'll be back to our channeling of Billie the Kid in a very few moments.
Don't go away. Channeling History will return right after these brief messages. You've no doubt heard of Tango and Cash, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Perhaps it takes two to tango. Well, now, on the first and third Thursdays of each month, there's a show called Tango and Friends at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Para X Radio Network with your host, Bruce Tango. And yes, there will be at least two to tango on each episode, sometimes even more. There's going to be lots of topics and lots of guests you'll all know and lots of surprises. Tango and Friends every first and third Thursday of the month at 8 p.m. right here on the Para X Radio Network.
I am Oz, the great and powerful. Who are you?
If you please, I'm Dorothy, the small and meek. I've come to ask you...
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come. Step forward, whippersnappers. Bring me the broomstick of a witch.
Martha's broom? But if we do that, we'll have to kill her to get it.
Bring me her broomstick, and I'll grant your request. Now go.
But what if she kills us first?
I said go!
What's that? What's that? It's Martha's castle guard. And look, there's her broom, right in front of the gate. Go get it. All right, I'll go in there, witch or no witch, guards or no guards. I'll tear them apart.
Oh, no, you won't. Don't think of leaving. My little party's just beginning. I always stir my cauldron Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Para X Radio Network. Now back off from that broom or I'll turn you into Toto's chew toy.
I do believe in witches. I do.
Have you ever wondered what Jesus and his followers would say if you could receive their messages today? In his new book, Spirits Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits, channeler and author Barry STrohm answers those questions for you. Using his gift of spirit communication, he brings you messages from such Holy Spirits as Moses, John the Baptist, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, Jesus, and even Mother Teresa and the Reverend Billie Graham. They discuss topics that are important for contemporary life in these troubled times. Spirits Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other booksellers. Signed copies are available on the author's website, spiritspredict.com. After reading this book, you will never again say, "What would Jesus say or do?"
Era X Radio.
Welcome back to Channeling History. Now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie STrohm.
Welcome back. We have been having a wonderful session with Billy the Kid so far, and I believe that Connie has a question for us from the chat room.
I do, and I'm anxious to hear the answer. Have you seen Sheriff Garrett since you've been on the other side, Billy?
Yes, I have. And I can't say that I enjoyed seeing him over here because he was such a liar. But when you're over here, you got to kind of get along with everybody. So I did tell him what I thought of him, and he kind of told me what he thought of me, and we just kind of left it go from there. But yes, I did see him, told him what I thought. But we can't very well do nasty things over here when you're on this side. So we are just kind of letting things go.
Okay. Sounds like something people should be doing on this side, too. Okay, where did you go after you fled the Maxwell farm?
After I fled the Maxwell farm, I didn't stop until I got down to Mexico. There were some people there that I knew. So I was wounded. So I spent some time just sitting back and recovering from my wounds. Worked down there for a while, herded cattle, worked for some ranchers. But after about 3-4 years, I got a little bit fed up with life in Mexico, and I headed back north.
Okay. Did you ever meet Jesse James?
Yes, there was actually one time that I met Jesse, and he asked me if I wanted to join his group, and I felt that it would just be a little bit too much for two relatively famous people to be in the same group, and that it would be hard not to attract a lot of attention from the law. So he was a good guy. We talked. And I said, thank you, but no thanks. And we parted ways.
Okay. When you were married, did you have any children?
I didn't get married until later in life. Now, do I have any children? I told you I was a ladies' man, so that might be a little bit hard to determine at this point. But as far as I know, I don't think I have any children out there.
Okay, we'll let it at that. Did you know Bill Cody?
Well, actually, after I went north and some time went by, I went to work for him. I was part of the Wild West show for a little bit. I was just a bit player, one of the cowboys that chased the Indians around. But yeah, I knew Bill. He was a pretty good guy, and he was kind of straight shooter.
Did he know who you were?
No. No, he never, if he did, he never let on. He may have guessed, but I'm pretty sure that he never knew who I was.
Did you ever kill anyone after the incident at the Maxwell farm?
No. After the Maxwell farm, I tried to not get into any situations where I would kill somebody, and then the law would realize who I really was. So I was, after I recovered in Mexico, I was really pretty straight and narrow for a while.
Okay. Who was Jessie Evans?
Jessie Evans was a friend of mine. He was an outlaw, got caught, served time in jail, and when he got out of jail, he changed his name and lived a quiet life pretty much as I did. Now, Jesse's the one that spilled the beans about me still being alive. He was trying to get a property deal straightened out and had to confess to the attorney who he really was. He also told the attorney that he knew some other people that were doing the same thing, and told him that I was one of them. And that's really how I was found out. So Jesse was an old friend of mine, but he is really the one that spilled the beans that Billie wasn't killed by Pat Garrett.
Okay, we have some more questions from our chat room. Someone would like to know, is there still money hidden out there that hasn't been recovered?
There might be a little bit, but keep in mind, I didn't do a lot of stealing. I rustled, but I never robbed a train, never robbed a bank. So there wasn't a time that I really stole a bunch of money that was to be hidden. So I do know some other outlaws that hid money and never got a chance to go back and get it. But for me, that doesn't really apply because I never really stole that much money.
Okay. What year did you pass over?
I actually died in 1950.
Oh, my word. Okay. How old were you when you died?
I was 90 years old. I almost made 91, but the Grim Reaper caught up with me first. But I was 90 years old when I died.
Who was Brushy Bill Roberts?
Brushy Bill Roberts. That's the name I assumed when I was living in Texas. I figured it was a good name. And notice I kept the name Bill, like Billy the Kid. So that was the name that Jesse told the attorney was Billy the Kid.
Okay. Why did you pick the name Orville Roberts?
Orville Roberts was the name of a person that I knew had died. And he died a long time ago and in another state. So I was living in Texas at the time, and I figured that Roberts would be a good name to assume because there would be some legal documents to prove that he was born, and I didn't think there were any legal documents to prove that he had died. So I figured that would be a good, safe alias.
Okay, so how about if you tell us about your life as Brushy Bill?
Well, as I told you earlier, I worked on the Wild West show for a while, came back, figured Texas was far enough away from New Mexico that nobody would really recognize me anymore. And I worked about the only thing I could do was work on a ranch. I herded cattle and tried to keep my life as straight and narrow as possible. Did not want to attract any attention because there was still a warrant out for my arrest, and I knew that if I got arrested, they could still hang me. So, met a good woman, married her. She was a bit younger than I was, but just tried to live a normal life. And in spite of my past and being hit by bullets a couple times, still lived to be 90 years old.
Amazing. Did you ever tell your wife who you really were?
Not until the attorney came and tried to get my story. So she was a bit surprised, but that's the way it was.
So why did you decide to make your existence public?
I was really upset that the governor had reneged on my pardon and had left my murder conviction on the books, even though I was 90 years old. I wanted to try to clear my name. It just upset me that everybody else had their name cleared, but not me. So when I had the opportunity, I thought that I could safely try to get the pardon that I had coming to me. We actually went to the governor, and he made a joke of it. And I actually died still having a warrant out there that would result in my hanging.
So why didn't anyone pay attention to your claims?
Well, we tried. I had people that did pay attention. There were a lot of people that were convinced. But I guess the governor didn't want to take a chance on the story not being true. If that had happened, I guess that the governor thought that he would be made a fool of in public. And Lord forbid, you wouldn't want any politicians being made a fool of. So, once again, I got stabbed in the back. But thank goodness I didn't live too much longer to brood about it.
Yes. So when you went to heaven, how were you judged?
Well, when I got to heaven, my guides said, Billie, you did some things that weren't good. And you're going to have to do some things to pay for what you did. Even though the times were violent, you made some decisions that were not good ones. So we're not going to send you down into lower levels. But what we're going to do is let you live future lifetimes where you will pay back the karma for what you did.
Okay, we have another good question from the chat room. Where was your body laid to rest after you passed?
The body is in Texas.
Okay. Did any of your old friends try to identify you before you passed away?
Yes. There were still some old friends alive, and I met with them. And they even confirmed that some of my wounds on my body, the scars, were those that were the same as Billy the Kid had on his body. But being outlaws in the past, there were many people that were afraid that they weren't telling the truth. But I can assure you that I really was Billy the Kid.
Okay. Have you reincarnated since your life as Billy?
Yes. I have come back one time with a short lifetime. And it wasn't too nice, I might tell you. I was actually a mob member in New York City, and I was born very poor, and I had a very difficult life, and I was actually killed at the age of 19. So that is what happens when you do bad things, and you have to pay it back through karma.
Yeah. How many lifetimes will it take for you to repay the karmic debt of your life as Billy the Kid?
Well, it's going to take one more. I have another life plan that has been laid out for me that I've agreed to, and that I will come back and live. So I'd just like everybody to understand that there are prices for what you do on Earth. I'm very pleased that I only have to do one more lifetime to repay my karmic debt. Because there are those out there that get sent back down to lower levels and have to live many lifetimes to pay for the damage that they created.
Yeah. Do you have a closing message for our viewers?
Yes. I would like to tell all of you, first of all, thank you for letting me come back and speak to you. As I said earlier, I'm amazed that so many people are still interested in the life of a country boy that had to shoot and kill in order to survive. I want the people listening to understand that you really do pay a price for the bad things that you do during an incarnate life. I still feel that I had no choice in many of the decisions that I had to make when I was living the life of Billy the Kid. Once they convicted me of that murder, there was very little I could do. I tried repeatedly to get a pardon. I even testified as the governor wanted me to do, but he stabbed me in the back and refused to give me the pardon that I wanted. So just be aware that there is a price that you will pay when you come back over here. Minor things are pretty easily forgiven if you understand that what you did was wrong. But if you do major things that hurt others, then you will be judged for them. That is the way of things over here. I wish that I had known more about what was taking place and the penalties for the decisions that I was making. Once the life of Billy the Kid was past me, I did try to live a fairly good life. And when I was judged, I did get credit for that time. I truly wish that things had been a little different, but they weren't. So, anyway, that's the way it is. I want to thank you once again for letting me come through. And I hope that I lived up to the people's expectations.
Thank you so much, Billy. We actually have one final question from our chat room for you. One of our listeners would like to know, where do you spend your time now?
Well, once you're up here, you can pretty well do what you want to do. I actually spend a lot of my time just watching things take place out in the West where I used to live. I can't imagine how many people are living in those areas where I used to rustle cattle. So I still travel around. I don't have any close family connections for the short life that I just came back from. So I just kind of make my plans for what I'm going to do. I have a soul family over here, and I do spend time with them. They have been with me for many incarnate lifetimes, and even though I didn't know them in that life, I do still spend time with them. So, it's a pretty good place over here. It's a lot easier than it was back when I was alive in the Old West. So, I would just advise people to make the most of what they have and enjoy their lives and be good to others. So I hope that answers the question.
That is very good advice, Billy. Thank you.
Okay. Billy, thank you so much for coming through for us again. As I said earlier, I did devote a chapter to him in my conspiracy book, If Spirits Speak of Conspiracies and Mysteries. And, in case you people are not aware, my new book is out now and is available on Amazon and on Kindle for download, so you can have instant satisfaction for it. The name of my new book is Spirits Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits. I would hope that you take advantage of what we have done and will take time to read the new book. All of the shows that we do are posted on Podomatic.com, where you can go to listen to it or download it for free. The shows are also put on my own YouTube channel, which is in my name, Barry STrohm. So even though you don't watch the shows in live time with us, you can pick them up and watch them in numerous other places. So next week, we're going to really stretch your imaginations. We're going to channel Archangel Azrael. He is the so-called angel of death. Now, I know many of you are going to doubt the existence of angels and our ability to communicate with them. I can assure you that they are incredibly real. I have seen them personally on numerous occasions, and I have photographed them. There is a page of angel photography on my website, spiritspredict.com. You can go on to there, click the page, Angel Photography, and look at the photographs that I took. Most of the photos were taken on the Gettysburg battlefield, and you will find that there is actually a photograph of an angel picking a soldier off of the battlefield. I think that is how the soldiers on the battlefield actually move on, is that the angels help them. One of the real angels that I've seen took place in Pennsylvania. We had been channeling, and I asked the roles of an angel, and the guy told me that angels carry your prayers to the Lord. So that night, Connie and I are asleep, and I wake up, and I look over, and I see an angel flying across the foot of the bed. So I see Connie was awake. I said, Connie, I just saw an angel. And she said, I just finished my prayers. So they had given me absolute proof that that is what one of the roles that angels play. We have channeled Azrael before. He will go into detail on just what angels are, what their roles are, and what they do as servants in heaven. This will be an outstanding show. I know many of you are going to doubt that we really have the ability to do this, so that is really why I've decided to do it at this time. We're going to have a bunch of very interesting shows coming up for the holidays. As I said, we will have Mother Mary on, and she will tell us the truth of the birth of Jesus. So, with that, I'm going to thank you all for listening. I invite you to listen to us again next week. We will be here on Sundays at 9 o'clock Eastern Time on the Para X Radio Network. And hopefully we will open your eyes to many of the fallacies that took place in history and try to bring you some of the truths that are involved. So with that, I'm going to say good night. Thank you for joining us. Please join us again next week, where we will be channeling with the Archangel Azrael, and I'm sure that you are going to enjoy that show. So good night.
Okay. I'd like to also thank you all for joining us again. It's great questions in the chat room. And I would like to also say, as I always do, God bless you all.
Thanks for listening to Channeling History. Tune in again next week for another electrifying episode, as we never know who will make an appearance or who will come through the portal. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2020. Our Story Begins by Kevin MacLeod, licensed through Incompetech.com.